Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. For today's video we are doing a short book review. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. I've got, what is it called? Memberships on this channel. Check that out. Follow me on Instagram. A book called The Spanish Love Deception, which out of context, if you don't like put the capitals to, I'm dying, to nounize love and deception, it sounds like you're saying the Spanish sure do love deception. It's kind of funny. So, The Spanish Love Deception is meant to be an enemies to lovers rom-com book. I will tell you, this took me like weeks to get through. Usually a rom-com can take me, I don't know, 2 afternoons. Not long at all. This was like 500 pages. It took me weeks to get through. This book actually made me really miserable, and I don't want to be. Thing is it is the author's like first go at a book, and the thing is as well is it's not offensive, it's not problematic, like it's not toxic or anything like that. It's just insufferable. I think maybe if you have ADHD, skip this one. Right, first things first. So it's enemies to lovers. It's about Catalina, that's how the Spanish pronounce it, and Aaron. And Catalina, she came from Spain, she lives in New York, but she has her sister's wedding to go back to and she doesn't have a date, and she worries about her family thinking nothing of her because she's like, I don't know, 27 and doesn't have a boyfriend. So she makes up that she has a boyfriend, and then she tries to find a date, and the only person that can go is Aaron from her work, the guy that she doesn't like, and her ex-boyfriend, ex-fiance or ex-boyfriend, whatever, is at the wedding. That's the plot. Okay, first and foremost, the writing was very, very, very childish. It is a first book of the author's, but it also feels a lot like a first draft. This is actually the more constructive part of the review, if I dare even act as though any of my reviews are constructive at all. It definitely needed a proper editor to remove at least 200 pages, because it's almost 500 pages and there is actually no need for the book to be that long. And considering The Spanish Love Deception, it's about them going to Spain to the wedding. You only get to the wedding 50% of the way through the book. Like the first half is just the build-up. No.
Stop it. Get some help.
And then they end up being at the wedding only for a few chapters as well, before there's like a really hurried, trigger warning, cancer plot thrown in at the end. So here's one of my first nitpicks. New York to Spain is a very long flight, so why would they only just go for the weekend? The whole time you're going to be jet lagged. It's like an 8-hour flight, and you're going to be there for like 3 nights, as if. And also at the end, her family, like in the time skip, her family are coming to visit her in New York, but again, just for a weekend. Does like jet lag not exist in Catalina's world? Stretch it out to a week, why not? It's also meant to be, or it's marketed as, enemies to lovers, except the thing is Aaron clearly fancied her and liked her from the start. Catalina is just a little bit of a dickhead and can't see the obvious. Another thing too, Aaron has blue eyes, didn't you know? Oceanic blue eyes, icy blue eyes, always staring at her like some type of stalker. Blue eyes were actually mentioned 58 times in this novel. I can't do maths. Is that 1 every 10 pages of I can't do maths. And ocean eyes 11 times.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened
11 times.
right?
Also, this is another nitpick of mine, but it made me feel ill. So Aaron is ginormous. He used to be a football player, I think. I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. So I guess like a rugby player. And he's ginormous. Like to the point where he dwarfs everything else in comparison. When they're in a car together, he's taking up all of this side of the car, and she's like 5 foot something. So she's like, oh, I'm so small and dainty. And because she's like so small and dainty and he's like so massive, like even on the airplane, it looks like the airplane is small compared to him. Like, sorry, is he Hagrid? Is he a half giant? Behave. He like picks her up a few times and like places her on his lap. And what is going on with romance authors? Is it sexy to be... Yes, it's sexy to have a man take care of you when you want it, of course, right? Let me rephrase that. Nope, let me go along with it. If you're a strong, independent woman, like I am, is it nice for a man to sometimes take care of you? Yes, sure. But this kind of infantilization of women in these rom-coms where they're just helpless and stupid about the men, and then they're being picked up, like he might as well just like carry her under his... In fact, at one point he does like sling her over his shoulder.
That's no way for a gentleman to treat a lady.
I mean, like, that's fine though. It's not like Colleen Hoover levels, but it's just the way he's described as being so big and Catalina so small, it makes me just feel like, is she the height of a toddler? Is she actually 2 years old? And I don't know about you guys, but I don't find that sexy. Wild concept, I know. So the first few pages of the book were almost enough for me to like put the book down. And a few people on Goodreads said that too, so I'm in good company. It is way too immature and childish. Catalina, in the opening, she ignores Aaron. They work together and she's with her best friend who's also a work colleague, and she puts her best friend directly in the middle of it. You'll see how. But then she has the gall to just go on about how she's a woman and she's good at her career and stuff because I don't know. But she's insanely unprofessional. I'm going to read out all of it so you feel my pain. I'll be your date to the wedding. This is the first page. Words I had never, not even in my wildest dreams, and trust me, I had a vivid imagination, conceived of hearing from that deep and rich tone reached my ears. Looking down at my coffee, I squinted my eyes, trying to search for any signs of noxious substances floating around, but that would at least explain what was happening. But nope, nothing. Just what was left of my Americano. I'll do it if you need someone that badly, the deep voice came again. Eyes growing wide, I lifted my head. I opened my mouth and then snapped it closed again. Rosie, I trailed off, the word leaving me in a whisper. Is he really there? Can you see him? Or did someone spike my coffee without me noticing? She lowered her voice. Nope, he's right there. Her head peeked around me very quickly. Hi, good morning, she said brightly, before her attention returned to my face. Right behind you. Should I repeat that a third time? His question sent a new wave of disbelief rushing down my body, freezing the blood in my veins. He wouldn't. Not because he couldn't, but because what he was saying did not make any freaking sense. Not in our world. One where we... All right, fine, he sighed. You can take me. He paused, sending more of that ice-cold wariness through me. To your sister's wedding. I bit back another burst of laughter. I didn't believe that, not for a second. The chances of him, I told Rosie, being actually serious are the same chances I have of Chris Evans popping out of nowhere and confessing his undying love to me. Chris Evans, is that the, not Homelander, the other one? Yes, Captain America, because when I think of Chris Evans, I think of that bloke, the DJ bloke. I made a show of looking right and left, non-existent. So, Rosie, you were saying something about Mr. Frinkle, right? There was no Mr. Frinkle. Lena, Rosie said with that fake toothy smile I knew she wore when she didn't want to be rude. He looks like he's serious. She spoke through her freaky smile. This would have been okay for maybe like a paragraph at best, but hold on. Her gaze inspected the man standing behind me. Yep, I think he might be serious. Nope, he can't be. I shook my head. Still refusing to turn around, I acknowledged that there was a possibility my friend was right. There couldn't be. There was no way Aaron Blackford, and she says that a lot for her novel. She's always like, Aaron freaking Blackford. Like I care. Like, she's talking about Dwayne The Rock Johnson. What? Colleague and well-established affliction of mine would even attempt to offer something like that. No way. An impatient sigh came from behind me. This is getting repetitive, Catalina. A long pause. Then another noisy exhale left his lips, this one much longer, but I did not turn around. I held my ground. Ignoring me won't make me disappear. You know that. I did. But that doesn't mean I won't keep trying, I muttered under my breath. Rosie levelled me with a look. Then she peeked around me again, keeping that toothy grin in place. Sorry about that, Aaron. We are not ignoring you, her grin strained. We are debating something. We are ignoring him, though. You don't need to spare his feelings. He doesn't have any. Oh, and Catalina doesn't like Aaron because there was a misunderstanding between them, and I think like she accidentally chucked a bunch of coffee on him and she was being a bit of an idiot and then he was being a bit of an idiot. It's like nothing deep. She acts as though he like, I don't know, spat at her grandma. Thanks, Rosie, Aaron told my friend, some of the usual coldness leaving his voice. Not that he'd be nice to anybody. Nice wasn't something Aaron did. I didn't even think he was able to pull off friendly. But he has always been less grim when it came to Rosie. A treatment that had never been for me. Do you think you can tell Catalina to turn round? I'd appreciate talking to her face and not to the back of her head. His tone dropped back to -0 degrees. That is, of course, if this is not one of her jokes that I never seem to understand, much less find funny. You and me both, dude. Heat rushed up my body, reaching my face. Sure, Rosie complied. I think I can do that. My friend's gaze bounced from that point behind me to my face, her eyebrows raised. Lena, so, Aaron would like you to turn around if this is not one of those jokes that... Thanks, Rosie. I got that. I gritted It keeps going. I gritted out between my teeth, feeling my cheeks burn. I refused to face him. That would mean letting him win whatever game he was playing. Plus, he had just called me unfunny. Him. If you could, tell Aaron that I don't think one can laugh at, or much less understand, jokes when one lacks a sense of humour. Please, that would be great. Thanks. Rosie scratched the side of her head, looking pleadingly at me. Don't make me do this, she seemed to ask me of her eyes. I widened mine at her, ignoring her plea and begging her to go along. She released a breath and then looked around me one more time. Aaron, she said, her fake grin getting bigger. Lena thinks that. I heard her, Rosie. Thank you. I'm pretty sure my words are reaching Catalina down there just fine, but if you could tell her I have work to do and cannot entertain this much longer, I would appreciate it. Down there? Stupidly large man. My size was average. Average for a Spaniard, sure, but average nonetheless. I was 5'3", almost 4. Thank you very much. 5'8" supremacy. Rosie's green eyes were back on me. So, Aaron has work and he would appreciate it. If I stopped myself when I heard the words sounding high-pitched and squeaky. I cleared my throat and tried again. If he is so busy, then please tell him to feel free to spare me. He can go back to his office and resume whatever workaholic activities he had shockingly paused to stick his nose in something that does not concern him. I watched my friend's mouth open, but the man behind me spoke before a sound could come out of her lips. So you heard what I said. My offer. Good. A pause, in which I cursed under my breath. Then, what's your answer? Rosie's face filled with shock one more time. My gaze remained on her, and I could picture how the dark brown in my eyes was turning to red with my growing exasperation. My answer? What the hell was he even trying to accomplish? Was this a new inventive way of playing in my head? My sanity? I have no idea what he's talking about. I heard nothing, I lied. You can tell him that too. Rosie tucked a curl behind her ear, her eyes jumping very briefly to Aaron and then returning to me. I think he's referring to the moment he offered to be your date to your sister's wedding, she explained with a soft voice. You know, right after you told me that things had changed and that now you needed to find someone, or anyone, I think you said, to go to Spain with you and attend that wedding, because otherwise you'd die a slow, painful death, and I think I got it. I rushed out, feeling my face burn again from the realization that Aaron had heard all of that. Thanks, Rosie. You can stop with the recap, or I'd be dying that slow, painful death right about now. See what I mean? This is the first few pages, and it is insufferable. Also, the author loves an ellipses. They feature sometimes once a page, sometimes 3 times a page. It's way too much. And then in the next chapter, there is this geezer being sexist in a meeting in modern New York. And he's not immediately called out for it or fired or sued or told off. I mean, for further context, at the beginning of the novel, Catalina is put in charge of organising a company event purely because she's a woman. And women like to organise parties. And initially, that fact is a bit of an elephant in the room. Lena realises she's only been picked because she's a woman. Not one of the blokes speak up for her. And then this geezer just starts being like really outwardly sexist. Again, in modern day New York. Now, I don't live in New York and I've been to New York, but I mean, if it was London, I'm not saying this stuff does happen, because of course it still does. But in London, I think you could just immediately... No, actually... Americans love suing. You could probably sue someone for discrimination quite quickly for this. Lena. I'm already covering for 2 of my best team members, Linda and Patricia. I don't have the hours in the week as it is. I hated complaining and fishing for some, or at this point, any kind of understanding, but what else could I do? Gerald snorted, making my head swivel in his direction. Well, that's a drawback of hiring women in their 30s. I don't really understand. Is it because Linda and Patricia were on maternity leave? I'm not sure if they covered that. I assume. Would you just stop wasting our time already? Gerald said, making the blood in my face drop to my feet. You don't have to take this to our boss. Gerald's chubby finger waved through the air at me. Stop making excuses and do it. You can smile and be extra friendly for a whole day, can't you? The sweaty man, crammed into a dress shirt designed for someone who had a class he'd never achieve, would take any chance he could get to bring anyone down, even more so if that happened to be a woman. I knew. Sweetheart, Gerald interrupted me, a sneer breaking across his face. Think of it as a party. Women know about those, don't they? Like, you see what I mean? It's so in your face. Like, in the 2024 year of our Lord. Okay. Just prepare some activities, get some food delivered here. Like, you were so immediately gone to TikTok and complain about it and then get them fired. Get the food delivered here, put on nice clothes and crack some jokes. You are young and cute. You won't even have to use your brain all that much. They'll be eating right out of your hand, he chuckled. I'm sure you know how to do that, don't you? Gerald rolled his eyes. Don't take it so seriously, Lena. He shot me a condescending look. I was just joking around. Right, guys? Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Hector deflating in his chair. Gerald, he said, sounding tired and discouraged. Come on, man. And this is in a professional meeting as well. Keeping my eyes on Gerald and trying to stop my chest from heaving with building helplessness, I refused to look at the two other men, Kabir and Aaron, who remained silent. They probably thought that they were not taking any side, but they were. Their silence was doing exactly that. Oh, come on, what? Oh, come on, what? Oh, yeah. Oh, come on, what? Oh, come on, what? Oh, come on, what? Who knows? Gerald scoffed. It's not like I said anything that's not true. The girl doesn't even need to try. Only then does Aaron, big, manly, Hagrid-sized Aaron, say enough and the meeting is adjourned, but Gerald gets one more jab in at Catalina. It's just so flagrant, so in your face, as if he wouldn't immediately get called into HR for it. Or Catalina wouldn't be able to file a lawsuit against her company for discrimination, as I already said. But don't let that make you sympathise with Catalina, because she is an idiot who never, ever stops yapping. Ever. She is incredibly immature. She has internal tangents that go on for pages, I counted, while she's having conversations with other characters. So she'll be yapping at someone, it'll remind her of something, she'll go off for like several pages, get back to the conversation, and you're like, what are they even talking about? I forgot. I was distracted because you wouldn't shut up. Here's an example. Daniel, who had been oddly quiet for someone who was supposed to be having a good time, sighed noisily. I don't think there's any need to share that with the group. My gaze swiveled in his direction, finding him with a deadpan expression. Thanks, Danny, Isabella gritted out between her teeth. But I'll let my sister decide if she wants to share her sexcapades with the table. Oh Lord, did she just call it sexcapades? At the change in Isabel's tone, Gonzalo wrapped his arm around her shoulders and tugged her against his side. I watched Isabella's body relax immediately, letting go of what I knew were years of contained animosity towards her fiancé's brother. Her sister's fiancé's brother is Catalina's ex-boyfriend. Sighing silently, I felt a pang of guilt slice across my chest. It was unprecedented, and I had no reason to feel responsible for the situation. But at the same time, it was hard to not let some of the weight fall on my own shoulders. In an ideal world, the best man wouldn't be my ex. In that same world, I wouldn't have panicked when learning that he was engaged and that never goes anywhere, by the way. So that's why she panics, because her ex is engaged and she doesn't want to be seen by her family. I'm doing the tangent thing now, so annoying. She doesn't want to be seen as her family. It's like, oh, poor Lena, she never moved on from the guy who broke her heart. She doesn't want to be pitied. But then that never goes anywhere. It doesn't really come up. It's not that relevant. He doesn't bring the fiance to the wedding. I was half expecting them to have broken up and him to try it on again with Catalina. Don't happen. Goes nowhere. Anyway, I wouldn't have panicked when learning he was engaged while I seemed to be stuck in time and alone, and I wouldn't have felt the need to lie to my family and tangle myself into a web of deception that I'd woven. Perhaps in that ideal world, the man by my side would be there because he loved me and not because I had struck a deal with him. But those scenarios were hypothetical and therefore unreal, unattainable, and each of them painted a picture that was far from the truth. In the real world, there was a consequence to every decision I made, to every choice I ever took. A perfect world where life happened neatly and ideally didn't exist. Life was messy and often hard. It did not wait for anybody to be ready or expect the bumps on the road. Okay, author, we get it. So woke, we get it. Not woke as in left wing, but woke as in oh my god, so wise, so worldly. You had to grab onto the wheel and steer your way back to your lane, and that was all I had done. That was what had brought me to where I was, for better or worse. It was unfortunate that the one man who Gonzalo shared DNA with was not only my ex, but also the man who had been the other half of the relationship that was the catalyst for me leaving everything I had once called home. But I had made the choice to date him, my university professor, the man who had introduced my sister to the love of her life. Because life wasn't ideal. It turned and bent. It spun you out for a minute and swung you back into the next. I'm not finished. Contrary to what most believed, when I had applied for the program abroad that had taken me to New York a year after everything had blown up in my face, I hadn't been escaping Daniel. I had been escaping the situation that my relationship with him had thrust me in. Granted, in the process, he had also broken my heart, and that was what everyone saw. The scolded, heartbroken runaway. But the damage went beyond a simple breakup. After that, I went through the worst year of my life. I almost quit uni and threw away my education, my future. All because people, those I had considered friends at some point, spun disgusting lies about me. Because she was sleeping with her university professor, people were like, oh, you're shagging him for a good grade. And she was like, oh, no. And that's also why she doesn't really want to get with Aaron once things start to heat up between them, because he's going to be her boss. And she's like, oh my God, what will people say? And it's like, you're almost 30 now. They're not going to care as much as you think. Get a life. It hadn't only scarred me, it also impacted my family. For one, that sad... Keeps going. For one, that sadness that everybody had regarded me with stuck to me across time, and the very few times I'd come back home single, it thickened until solidifying into something I'd carried with me. Even my parents, in a way, I could tell that they were scared I'd never bounce back from it, which was stupid. I was over Daniel. My singlehood had nothing to do with that. I simply ... See? Struggled to trust somebody enough to give myself away completely. I managed to keep myself 1 or 2 feet from anything that had the potential to hurt me, and those always ended up one of 2 ways. I either walked away, or I was the one who was walked away from, but at least I did come out of it wholly. As for Isabel, she had gone from loving Daniel for giving her Gonzales to threatening the best man's balls repeatedly, and while she turned into my fiercest protector and cheerleader, the breakup never shook the foundation of her own relationship, which was evidence of how much they adored and loved each other. Besides, over the years, she had come to accept that even if Daniel had been at fault for a part, he hadn't done anything besides accept to break some unspoken rule about dating a former student. Society had done the rest, which didn't give me, or Isabel, or Daniel the right to force Gonzalo to pick a side, something that Isabel had come to terms with, eventually, in her own way. Do you remember what they were talking about before all of that? There were no sexcapades, Issa. I shook my head lightly, trying to shove all those thoughts and memories away. There is literally no need for her to internally monologue for 3 pages straight whilst in the midst of a conversation with someone else. It's screaming for an editor almost as much as I was screaming whilst reading this. Like, it's just one of many examples. Here's another one. Forget about technicalities. You're still my fave. Sticking my tongue out for the picture, so pretty, so popular. I looked at her over my shoulder. If not for our heart-shaped faces, we wouldn't look anything alike. Isabella had always been taller and leaner than me. Her eyes had a little green speckles to the brown we shared, something that I had always been envious of, and her hair was curlier and darker, just like Mama's. But the differences didn't stop there. Where my sis was this puzzle piece that fit anywhere at the first try, I had always seemed to struggle with finding my place. Because you yap so much, dude. Let's be real. Somehow, I always managed to be missing a little corner or have a little extra edge that pushed me to keep me trying somewhere I might fit better. That pushed me to keep looking for that place to call home, because that was no longer Spain for me, but neither was New York. As much as I had Rosie and a career I was proud of, it had always felt a little lonely, incomplete. Hello, Earth calling Lena, she said, coming to my side and tugging my arm. What's up with you today? Lena, respectfully, with peace and love, shut the fuck up. When I tell you that the entire book is like this, and it's part of the reason it took me weeks upon weeks to finish, because it's like, oh, she's just blathering again. Let me go do something else for a bit. Also, okay, so Catalina isn't like the other girls because she enjoys eating chocolate. It's referenced a lot. She's always like, oh, chocolate cake. And Aaron's like, oh, I know you like this chocolate. But she gets insecure about the lead up to the wedding because her ex is the best man. So she basically... trigger warning eating disorders, also trigger warning really flippant. She basically has an eating disorder for all of a week. She cuts out the chocolate, right? And then she cuts out like a few other things. And then she's not eating like a lot, right? But then one day, because this goes on for about a week, by the way, one day she almost passes out from not eating. Like almost passes out. She's there lying on the floor, and then Daniel has to not Daniel, the other one. Aaron has to rescue her, of course. Not going to lie, when I read that bit, made me roll my eyes a little bit. I too have had eating problems. I used to be able to, trigger warning, water fast for days, like up to a week at a time when I was younger. I was nuts. Never passed out. Had to lie down a lot. Never passed out. Like, human bodies are actually way more resilient than you think. That's why when some people like have really bad disorders, they can just like carry on for so long, like sometimes even years before it all gives up. But yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, she's barely eaten today and now she's lying on the floor. What? But even worse than that, is, so she has this eating disorder for all of a week, and then she magically gets better and doesn't think of it like ever again because Aaron finds her, rescues her, gives her a homemade flapjack and tells her to eat something. Behave. Like, it's that simple, is it? Oh, please. Also, at the end, so all of these romance books, for some reason, once the couple are together, they have to break up. It's like the third act breakup trope. And the reason they break up in this is because people, what's his name? Gerald is being horrible, being like, so you're sleeping with the boss. Ugh. So that's why they break up, right? But then they don't even really break up. Just Aaron goes to see his dad, who he doesn't really speak to because his dad was mean to him when he was younger. But it turns out his dad has cancer. So Lena doesn't know any of this, but then she finds out from like HR because Gerald gets fired, I think. I don't know, because he's just a creep. Fair enough. She finds out from HR. She flies out to wherever Aaron is at the hospital to go see him at the hospital, which, you know, bit eager. Okay, so they have this romantic reunion at the hospital in the hallway whilst his dad has cancer inside one of the rooms. Okay, it's so unhinged, actually. Like, explaining it is quite unhinged. It, like someone really had to get cancer for them two to get back together. Maybe it's just not meant to be. I didn't care much for this large, overbearing family trope where, like, everyone is in Lena's business and, like, all of her cousins and aunts and uncles. That's because I don't have... I have a large family. I'm not close with like any of them outside my immediate family. They're not nosy. No one cares about me. I think if I died tomorrow, only 3 people would notice. That's in my immediate family and my nan. So maybe I'm just not the target audience for it. It's not relatable for me. There's no proper flirting between them. They do this fake auction thing, whatever, where like the blokes are being auctioned off and then she purchases him to protect him from some old lady, I can't remember, in New York. And when they get to Spain, there's not really any flirting with them, but they have to pretend that they're in a relationship. And then Lena starts to get really confused about it, and she's like, oh, but it's all an act, even though Aaron's like kind of being obvious that it isn't an act. But like I say, there's no proper flirting between them. It's just Lena freaking out the whole time. And then they have their first snog, and it goes 0 to 100 very, very quickly. Aaron pressed himself against me. First snog, by the way, first kiss. The heat of his hardness furiously seeping through the layers of clothing between us. More. I begged again. I wasn't ashamed. I'd do it again and again and again. So demanding. A husky chuckle caressed my lips. If I snuck my hand under your dress, Aaron rasped against my mouth, rocking against me and throbbing between my legs. How wet would I find you, baby? He starts calling her baby a lot, but also, like, this is just from their first kiss. Sit down, Aaron. You are crazy. And then this is during sex. I want to feel you milking me, baby. Bah! You're not a cow, Aaron. Also, he's such a kind of, like, he's harmless. He's ultimately harmless, but he's such a boring, unassuming guy. And then turns into a complete dom daddy in the bedroom out of nowhere, apropos of nothing. Look at me. I want you to look at me.
Look at me.
Aaron pulled both my arms behind my back, securing my wrists with one hand, my back arched. Look at you, at my mercy. He increased the rhythm of my hips of the way he jerked me onto his... Just where I've wanted you all this time. Also, it's the way that all these romance novels really want, like, the man to be such a dom daddy, like, such a dominant, like, every Colleen Hoover. But then, even, like, the 50 Shades ones. But then, there's nary a daddy to be found. There's never a daddy thrown around. There's never a... No, I'm not going to say it because I'll get clipped. But there's never a, yes, daddy. It's just disappointing, really. Like, who are these books for? It's for people who think they aren't vanilla. Because... I don't know, they get like bent over a desk one time. Here's my next rant. Something I've realised. Yeah. Aaron gives absolutely nothing. He is so bland and so boring, and he has blue eyes and he's superhumanly massive apparently, but that is it. And then I realised that all of these male leads are basically the same. Body of a chiseled Greek demigod, Superman, aka Henry Cavill style hair, and zero personality other than being bland or a sex offender, depending on the author. Aaron falls into the former camp, so whilst he's not offensive or a red flag, he does highlight the kind of superficiality of the audiences of this genre, as he's so interchangeable with any other male lead. Which, another rant. I've been saying for a long time, men are shallow. Transformers taught men that you can be a Shia LaBeouf, but get a Megan Fox. Shallow, shallow, shallow. Like, men will be doing nothing but think they deserve a supermodel, blah, blah, blah. Be saying all this stuff, right? And then I'd be saying, but women, you know, we just want a good personality. I mean, look at, like, the Fallout TV show and the amount of women that were simping over the ghoul. But then I see your ghoul and I raise you a Joshua Graham from the New Vegas DLC. Behave. You know, I've really been saying some of my friends, I bet most of the women I know would just love to hand feed Jack Black grapes. Maybe not at the moment because he's in a controversy for not standing up for Kyle Gass. Hand feed Jack Black grapes rather than go on a date with boring Chris Pratt. Because Chris Pratt, by name and by nature, even though he's ripped, you know. But then reading these books, it's like all of these male leads are so fucking boring. They have absolutely nothing going on up here. Lights are on. No one's home except maybe like sex offenders. And then I realised, you know, well, the target demographic for these books are generally women, and it's generally women by the millions who are purchasing these books. Look how popular Colleen Hoover is. This was a very popular book. There's loads of books like this where all the male leads basically look like Henry Cavill and they've got nothing else going on. They're not even funny. And then I realised, boy, everybody is stupid except for me.
Boy, everyone is stupid except me.
Everyone is just a bit superficial. Women and men. I saw a TikTok about this the other day where this girl was going on about how like women aren't that superficial. We just want you to have a bit of charisma. And I do agree. But yet millions of people reading these and fantasizing over these boring men. To know, man. I came to this epiphany and I was actually a bit disappointed in my gender. We must do better. And if they're gonna be hot, if these dudes are gonna be hot, they at least have to be funny or interesting, and none of them are. The most interesting thing about every Colleen Hoover lead is that they're a toxic piece of shit and somehow get away with it. Anyway, when the sexist idiot Gerald gets fired, Lena gets brought into HR because Gerald was making all of these nasty insinuations about her fledgling relationship with Aaron. And Lena loses the plot, and then like she forces them to break up, even though from Aaron's viewpoint, he wasn't breaking up with her. He was just going to go visit his dad who had cancer. So Lena just looks like a massive idiot for like, you know, moping around for a few days, right? She gets called into HR and then finds out and discovers that like other people made complaints about, because she didn't really complain about Gerald, I think. Other people made complaints about what happened against Gerald rather than Lena. Lena realizes that everyone in the office is on her side because they complained about the sexist bloke and get him fired. So in the end, Lena just looks a bit daft and stupid for not realising that grown adults shouldn't give a shit about office relationships as long as it doesn't interfere with work. It's just like, oh, okay, whatever. And as I already said, the subplot of Daniel being the big bad ex was really underdeveloped. He appears for 2 chapters, does nothing and leaves. And there goes the greatest antagonist we've ever seen. That's all I had to say about the Spanish Love Deception. It's just not, it's not offensive. It's not problematic. It gave me an epiphany about all the women who like these types of bland, mild, boring romance books. But yeah, not great. Insufferable to read. It was a slog to get through. Would not recommend, but it was a first book. So it makes me feel, am I bad? Am I the problem? No, it's these authors who won't get editors who are wrong. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. I make new videos whenever I feel like it. Follow me on Instagram and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.